Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Mansa XP. It is Mansa, and today we will be reviewing a video game that a lot of people have had on there. If you've been on any underrated Switch game lists, most underrated games from the last 5 years, best games on Switch, exclusive, stuff like that, you've probably seen this game, and that game that we're going to talk about today is Astral Chain. Now, I know I'm a few years late on reviewing this. I've actually owned it for about 3 years, but we know how backlogs go. You kind of let games fall by the wayside. You don't get back into them for a little while. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to break down, spoiler free, of course, nothing with the story or anything. Just, what my experience was with the game, gameplay, the uniqueness of it, background on it. And where I think the franchise may go in the future, because I do think this could be a nice title that Nintendo can put under its belt like they've been doing with Xenoblade and other games like that. So if you're new to the channel, please make sure you do hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and then let's get right into it after this. So Astral Chain is a game for the Nintendo Switch exclusive, dropped back in 2019, and it is a action adventure slash hack and slash, even if you want to call it action RPG. It was directed by Takahisa Tora, who actually learned under Hideki Kamiya, who, if you know or don't know, actually is the creator of Devil May Cry and Bayonetta. So you can kind of see where that style and the ranking and certain things with the video game kind of come from. It's directly from that family tree. And what the game is about is, this is in the, not distant future, pretty much like 50 years from now, 2078. There has been a pandemic. Whatever's left of humanity is up on what is called the Ark, where they kind of stay and can kind of live out their lives. There are these creatures called chimeras that are coming through the astral plane, which is a play on the name of the game, which I'll be honest, I did not notice until I was almost done playing it. I understood the chain part, but maybe I noticed when I first played it. But anyway, so they're coming through. They're like making these rifts. They're these creatures that come through, and they make it pretty much not safe. And then, no spoilers, but you'll kind of learn that there is someone kind of behind it a little bit, or making it a little more exacerbated than it should be. So you play as one of two twins, whichever one you want to pick, and then the other one is your brother or sister, and you have the adopted father, who is the captain of the police force, which you work on, which is the Neuron Police, where they go through, they have these things called legions, which is where the Astral Chain name comes from. So the legions are these chimeras, essentially, that are now being controlled and being used by the police, that you can use with you in the game to fight the chimeras, go through, do investigative work, things like that. So speaking of legions, let's get into the gameplay of the game. So I think this has one of the most original, maybe I haven't played a game like it and there is, but one of the most original game styles that I've seen. I do like action games. I do like Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, Nier Automata, who Takahisa Tora also worked for with Platinum Games, but it's just such a unique style. As far as it does take a little bit, to kind of get into. So to start off, you control your character regularly with the left stick and the right stick to turn the camera and everything, but then you can let out this legion with the right shoulder button, and you kind of hold that button to then push it around. Either you can use the chain from it to wrap around enemies and chain them together. You can put the chain around enemies, not fully completely go around them, and then hop across that chain to then attack. You can do different combos. You can send your legion out to fight while you sit back and maybe shoot or whatever. You don't have that many weapons yourself. You only have a little pistol, a baton, and then you have a heavier attack weapon, which is the one I would mostly use. But using the legion as an extension of yourself and actually paying attention while you're trying to string together combos makes the game just you don't even notice you don't have that many weapons. Of course, the legion have a limited on the amount of energy it has, and you don't want it to sit out there and get smacked around. You don't want to let it sit out there defenseless, getting hit, and then that lowers the energy level and things like that. But there's a lot of strategy into it. Of course, it does take some getting used to. Like I said, you're basically controlling 2 people at once. There's a co-op mode that you can use, but other than that, if you're just fighting with yourself, you have 5 different types of legions, depending on how you want to fight or approach a battle. I mean, sometimes you do have to use specific legions because they have certain abilities, such as the Sword Legion has a special ability to cut these tethered ties to certain enemies that if you don't do that, they're pretty much invincible and things like that. So you do want to pay attention to how I want to strategize for this battle. Do I need the Arm Legion? Do I need the Beast Legion to do other things? But that's pretty much what it comes down to when you get in combat. Like, it is fast paced, but you do kind of have to be on your toes a little bit. When it comes to the different kinds of legions, this also comes into play when you're out doing missions and cases. So the game consists of technically 12 files, as they're calling it, which are like levels or missions, if you want to think of it that way. Mostly 11 for the main story. And when you're on these different files, you do go through pretty much like a hub area for each one, and there are multiple cases you can do. You have red cases, which are like the main cases, and then blue cases on the side. Some of them are simple, like help someone find their dog or help bring a kid some ice cream and some stuff like that. And then the red case is sometimes a little bit more serious. You're fighting a certain monster, or you're clearing out an area in a certain amount of time. There's things like that, and you don't really have to do all of them, of course, but I do recommend doing as many as you can because you do get good rewards, good items. It is a ranking system, right? Like, you do get things that you can upgrade your Legion with after the fact. So I do recommend doing as many as you can. You don't have to do all of them, but I do think you should try and do as many as possible just to make it easier for you, like, as you're playing the game. Now, speaking of being easy, there are a bunch of different modes, of course, to play with. So you have like Unchained mode, which is basically like just story. If you just want to experience the story, it's like very easy mode, like below easy mode, basically. Then you have Casual mode, which is, I don't want to say normal, I guess that would be easy. And then you have Standard, which is in between normal and hard, which is what I played on. And, you know, it varies, like, you get more revives or unlimited revives for the lesser, you know, tier modes, like the easier modes, you get more revives. When you get up after you finish a file and play on the hardest mode, which is ultimate, and that one you have no revives, you start over from the beginning if you die. And you can pretty much do that right after you finish. So the other thing with it when it comes to unlocking things is there are things called orders, which are kind of like achievements within the game. So, hey, do this attack 8 times, or, you know, just little mini achievements, and you do get rewards for doing those as well. So you don't have to necessarily look at the list and then try and do each thing. It's just, you just want to kind of make some variety as you're playing the game. But in order to help with that variety, you want to make sure you are upgrading your Legion, like I mentioned. So there are different abilities you can have and different types of like characteristics you can put on your Legion. And this is where you kind of have to make sense of what you're doing with your playstyle. So for example, I'm not going to put the ability of having a longer chain or an electric chain or whatever on my Arrow Legion, because the Arrow Legion is mostly used for, you know, long distance fighting. I'm not really sending him out there to kind of fight or use his chain or anything, so that's kind of a wasted spot. Or if you're using the Axe Legion, which is more for defense, you're not going to just keep giving a bunch of upgrades to, I mean, you can, to have his attack power go up, because you don't want him to just be, you know, a wall, and maybe you do. So you kind of got to think in those terms. What do you want to use the actual legions for, and what do you want to do? Now, when it comes to other abilities and upgrades, I do recommend trying to get as many sync attacks as possible. And what sync attacks are during these combos or during different options and actions, like doing a perfect dodge or doing a, you know, simple combo, or right after you do, once you chain an enemy up, you'll see a small glow coming from your, you know, your wrist machine that the Legion comes out of. And when you time it perfectly, you'll then unlock another combo to then do, or another attack to do additional damage on top of that. So sometimes you gotta, as you're upgrading your Legion, you want to think about, like, I personally think you should get all the sync attacks as soon as you can. Obviously upgrade the attack power and the defense and all those kind of things, but I think sync attacks, just having more options and, you know, more times and chances to do as much damage as possible is important. I think in the game you get limited opportunities sometimes, or your Legion might get hurt. And I think the sync attacks are like one of the coolest parts of the game, to be honest. Like, I'll just be attacking an enemy, like this is near, let's say the last 3 missions of the game, and I've upgraded so much that I don't even remember half of the sync attacks that I unlocked. Like, I'll be fighting, oh, sync attack, oh, after that sync attack another one came up, oh, I chained them together, another sync attack, oh, I called him out, and like it just keeps going. And that's what you like with this style. And it's kind of what you expect for someone coming from Under the Tree of Devil May Cry and Bayonetta. And with that, speaking of style and varying ways to play the game and spicing it up, you do get ranked based on that. Unless you play on the easiest difficulty, there's no ranking. But when you read how you were getting ranked for each of these cases or type of fights you get in, the long drawn out fights, you'll see each of the things that you did in that fight. So you'll see like, oh, you did a perfect dodge that had a sync attack. Oh, you used 4 different legions. Oh, you like, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And then that will then give you more rewards, more ways to upgrade your legions further, more items to use, and things of that nature. The other thing I really liked about Astral Chain was the varied amount of things you could do. So it is a action game, like we said, but it also has, a lot of puzzles to do. So whenever you do go into the astral plane to do some type of investigative work, you'll be finding a lot of enemies, but to traverse through the place, there are a lot of different, puzzles, like Zelda-like puzzles, right? Like move this block here, or have a timed shot between this arrow and, that machine over there, or send your legion around the corner and then use the chain to jump around when you couldn't get around normally. And I really like that balance of that. And then another aspect of it is the investigative part. Like, you are a police person, right? So you will go through, ask people, gather clues together, and then people will ask you like, okay, so what do we think we're going to do from here? And you have like the highlighted words or clues from the things you discovered, and you'll use that to try and solve the case. You have a thing called the iris, which is a mechanic that you can kind of look at enemies or look at trails and try and find clues and things like that. You have a beast legion that can sniff out and find people based on if you give them an item of that person, or dig up hidden treasure and stuff like that. So I think like Platinum did such a great job on this game as far as not over incorporating any of the other aspects that maybe hardcore action fans will just like, but they did it so well. They blended it well together. It's not just one type of thing. As far as the story goes, I mean, like I said, it's not that compelling. I'm not gonna have any spoilers for it, but it is pretty predictable on what's going on and who's behind it and things like that. But I mean, other than that, I think they pretty much nailed exactly what they needed to nail. So I want to talk about some tips and tricks. So with these reviews, I do want to give out some advice on things I did and what you can do as you're going into the game. You don't have to do it, but I think it's some things like I wish I knew when I first started, and I could make the playtime a little easier for myself. First one is, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but try and do as many cases as you can. When you go on these different missions, you want to do even the little side missions and quests and stuff like that, just because it makes life easier as far as you want to get as much what they call gene code that you use to upgrade your legions as much as possible, because it just makes it easier, right? Like, you can just do the main mission and be done with it, but then now you got your legions aren't as strong as they possibly can, and you're struggling or dying so often because you weren't doing all these other side missions and optional parts of the game that honestly don't take that long. The other tip I want to give is, again, I mentioned it earlier, but make sure you're upgrading your legions in ways that make sense, right? Like, if you send out a certain legion out, like let's say the Sword Legion, you send him out a lot, give him some abilities and upgrades that will help. Like, there's one ability that they have like an electric charge that comes out when you send them out, or they have these sharp rings around them when they're going around attacking enemies, like stuff like that. You want to make sure you're doing. You don't want to, if you have a long range person, you don't want them to have super strong like combo work, or a long chain like I mentioned earlier, or stuff like that. You want to make sure your legions, you look at their characteristics and your play style and then upgrade them accordingly. Another tip I want to give is, it goes along with upgrading your Legion, but you want to do as many different combos, actions, use as many Legions as you possibly can, just because it helps, again, not just getting your rank up, but you know, there are those orders I mentioned, those achievements that you can get from doing certain things over and over again, and it kind of makes the game stale if you don't do that, right? Like if you're doing the same combo over and over again, if you're doing the same Legion over and over again, like you're kind of like shortchanging yourself. It's not that fun. I think the, you know, developers put a lot of thought into it. Like there's some attacks with the Beast Legion where I'm hitting the enemies and then I throw the sword up in the air and then the Beast Legion catches it in his mouth, does like a somersault and then slams the sword down into the enemy. Like there's so many cool animations and actions in this game that I think variety is the spice of life, basically. Like variety is the spice of Astral Chain. You want to do as many different things as possible. My last tip is use what's called mission items. I'm not sure if that's the actual name of it, but basically you'll see certain items that have a different label or indicator on them that if you don't use it, you lose it, basically. So you want to make sure when you're setting up your item wheel, you have all those items that'll disappear after you finish the mission. You want to use all of those first. So I was very confused by this when I was first playing. I'm like, why is this the same item twice? So you do want to look at that and make sure you're using those items first. So you have like, you know, medicine, you have things to heighten your attack or defense or energy for your Legion, stuff like that. You want to make sure you use all of those. Pretty much that's all you should be using. Like if you don't have enough of those, then use your regular items. So you want to make sure you use those items first, because if you don't, they will leave you once you finish the mission. And let's get into the replay value or lasting appeal of the game. So according to How Long to Beat, it should take you just 20 hours to finish this game, which is a good amount of time, especially for the type of game it is. If you do missions and side missions and stuff like that, it says it will take you 28 hours. And if you're a completionist, it will take you around 80 hours. So for myself personally, I'm not a completionist when it comes to video games, but I try to do as much as I can in my immediate vicinity. So as I'm going through, like I'll do the cases, like I said, as I find them. If they're on the map, I'll try and do as much as I can in the game. If I can't figure something out, I'll just skip it, but I'll try to do as much as I can. I finished the game in around 35 hours. I don't typically go back to playing games, so as far as the replay value, there's not a lot of it for me, but that's okay because I don't really replay games. I get as much fun as I can out of it when I'm playing it, and then I move on. But if you do want to replay it, you can go back, like I said, after you finish a file or mission. You can play it on a harder difficulty. You can go back and backtrack to access areas you couldn't before because you didn't have a certain Legion or ability. You can then do file 12, which is an epilogue where it's like 70 or something extra new missions to do if you want to. So there's a decent amount of replay value. And then finally, the score. What do I give this game? So Metacritic right now, they have it at a 87. User scores at a 8.9, and I'm going a little bit over that. So I give this game a solid 9.5, right? Like, again, I'm a little biased because I do love action games. I do like what Platinum Games has been doing, but I think from the uniqueness, the style, the graphical style, again, the story isn't that great, but that's whatever. The replayability, the achievements, the upgrading and what skill trees and things like that, I think they did a really good job. The music is pretty good too, so I do give it a 9.5. The only thing that I would like would be, I'd say, the main protagonist. Even though you do have the Legions to be an extension of yourself, I would like some more weapons. Like just having the pistol, the baton, and the sword, it's like, all right, I need something else now. I'm kidding. It's getting a little overdone now. So I would like that. Again, I wish the story was a little better, but other than that, great game. Not too long. I'd say if you haven't picked it up yet, definitely pick it up. I wish I got it physical, but I did get it digital back in 2020, so it is what it is. But that's it. That's my review of Astral Chain. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you decide to go buy it. I'm sure you've heard it already. If you've been on the fence, take it from me. definitely need this game. Must have on the Nintendo Switch, definitely. And that pretty much wraps it up. So I appreciate you guys. Make sure you do subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a like, leave a comment down below on what you thought of this review, what I can do to improve and things like that. You know, I'm still new to doing the reviews and things like that. So yeah, let me know. I appreciate it. And I'll catch you on the next video.